Hey, we're live. Can start. All righty. Welcome, everyone. I'd like to call to order this meeting of the Bond Oversight Committee for May 22nd, 2025. I'm Julie Hoy.
Mike Karen. Bob Courtright.
Paul Tegan, Ward 1, alternate.
Irving and Brown, Ward 5.
Great. Thank you. Can I have a motion to approve the April 24th, 2025 meeting minutes?
So moved. Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? And all in favor?
Aye.
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 Perfect. And moving on to action items, the Civic Center, Aaron.
Yeah, thank you. Okay. So I'm here today to provide a short update to the Civic Center, but primarily we're here to present some design alternates that we've been considering and are currently unable to afford at this time. And so we are bringing a request to this group to potentially give us, a thumbs up or a thumbs down, and then depending on that result, we would take a formal request to council at a later date, likely in early June. Yeah. So here's the agenda for today. Again, just a quick project overview. As part of the request, I think it's important for us to understand kind of the overall bond status. So we're going to hit that real briefly, and then Josh is going to share a slide on where we are with our bond premium and interest earnings. That's going to help potentially facilitate this request. I'll do a quick review of those design changes or alternates that we think are important to the project, and then finish up with some quick updates on where we are and where we're heading for the move beginning in June. Great. So this, I think most of you have probably seen this slide once or twice. And so again, just to kind of remind ourselves and kind of reset the purpose and the goals that we've set forth for this project. So the three priorities are up on the board. So the first one is to provide a resilient, safe, and sustainable building. So obviously, seismic retrofit is like the marquee improvement for this project, and along with that, some of the building system improvements that are at the end of their life, and so that's the primary goal, and we'll be accomplishing that with this project. And then secondary to that is trying to create an inviting, accessible space for the public, which includes better wayfinding, better navigation through the space, not only outside of the building, but also inside the building. And then lastly, the third goal that we're trying to achieve is a 21st century workspace. And so what does that mean? That means providing more efficient workspace for staff, a place that looks at not only retaining the current employees we have, but also as we look to staff for the future, kind of being an attractive workspace for those folks. And so we have some improvements that'll try to meet that goal as much as possible.
Just a quick note that Councilor Nishioka's entered the meeting. Thank you. Thank you.
So I think this chart is pretty telling. It really kind of paints the picture for how much money is going towards those kind of what we'll call bond requirements, the seismic improvements, the building systems, accessibility upgrades. That's really the lion's share of the pie. And then we have a small sliver that we've identified to do those other improvements that kind of hit that category 2 and 3, which is, we're kind of going to be painting and recarpeting the space on the second and third floor. As a reminder, we are pretty much primarily shelling the first floor other than the customer service center to try to minimize how much money is spent. We don't have any programming down there. So
Second quarter.
oh yeah, in the second quarter, I'm sorry, yeah, sorry. That's an important piece.
No.
Forget about that.
Did something happen? I don't.
No, I completely forgot about that, yeah. And then we also are making some organizational improvements. So again, as part of that work efficiency and programming, we're minimizing the wall removal and, you know, adding new walls. But along with that, we're also trying to restructure as much as we can, again, within that small sliver. And then we are planning on flexible system furniture. So standard kit of parts for the open space office areas where we can have that kind of ergonomic furniture for staff. All right, so just real quick, this is what's in the project. So again, probably a reminder, and I'm sure you've seen a similar slide in past presentations, but exterior improvements, obviously the seismic upgrades, accommodating that through concrete shear walls, atrium upgrades with the skylight and making that space seismically sound. And then the accessibility that I mentioned before, we've got a lot of spaces in the exterior that don't meet current ADA standards, door clearances, handrails, that kind of thing. And then on the interior, as I mentioned before, building system improvements. We are doing fire sprinklers, mechanical duct work, lighting, and the water line, to name a few. Other interior space improvements are the refreshed paint, as I mentioned, and the flooring. And then while we're doing the sprinklers and duct work, we'll have to remove the ceiling tiles and lighting. So that'll be an improvement that we make on those floors, the second and third, and part of the first. And then the flexible system furniture, as I mentioned. So this tells us where we are with the overall bond spending status. And so the blue is what we have bid. So that represents 12% of the 300 million for the total bond. And then we've completed, reading that number from here, 32.6 million, which is roughly 11% of that 300. So while we still have a long ways to go, the remainder in that green is still 77% of the bond program. We are, making progress, and I would just note that we are receiving fairly competitive bids, and most of our projects have been coming in under our engineer's estimates, which is good. And so just as a reminder, we have the bond calendar there on the side, the bond sale calendar on the side there. So we have obviously issued our first 100 million back in February 23, and we're targeting a second issuance of another 100 million in the spring of 26. And then we'll follow that with our third issuance of another 100 million in the spring of 2029. And so I think the next slide will say this, but when we, and Josh can further add since he's the finance guy, but when we do these bond sales, we have the opportunity to potentially get bond premiums. And then when we have that money in the bank, there's an opportunity to earn interest. And so we have accumulated some funds with this first bond sale, and that's represented in the next slide. So is there anything, Alan or Josh, that you want to add to this slide for commentary?
I think the only thing I'd add is those are targeted dates for the issuances. If the market's especially volatile, we'll probably shift it. Also, if we don't need it, we'll shift it. If we're not spending as fast as we think we are, we have spending requirements. So once you issue, you're supposed to be able to spend 85% of it within 3 years. So we want to make sure we target that with enough time for engineering to actually get the projects delivered. So I'm pretty sure the spring 2026 we're going to issue the second round. There's a potential that it might be a little bit less than 100 million, but we're working through that, and that would just shift more to that third issuance, and that again would be based on when we need it. We're targeting 3 years in with the 10-year program.
And I guess I would just add that really what we're trying to reinforce what Aaron said about trying to show you here sort of where we are in the program and kind of the risk status that we're at, right? So the completed projects, the risk is all taken care of and we're covered there. In the blue projects, we have a pretty good feel for where we are. We've received bids. There's still some risk while we're in construction, right? That we could uncover additional costs. But as Aaron said, I mean, so far we've had good luck staying within budget, even dealing with those things because of the bids we've received and the way projects have gone. So, you know, we're roughly a quarter of the way through with 3/4 left to go. And so we've accumulated these extra funds and premium and interest. So this is good context to have them think about making a withdrawal against those extra funds.
So if we can go to the next slide. I guess just really quick. So when you sell a bond, sometimes what happens is as part of the sale, they're targeting a certain interest value. So sometimes what they do in order to get the bonds is they offer a premium. So in this case, when we went to sell the first round of bonds, we received just over $7 million in premium. And just for clarity, it's treated the same as the issued bonds. So it has the same restrictions, the same requirements. It's just kind of above and beyond. And the city historically hasn't had the same challenge that we're experiencing with this one because usually it's a single issue. So it's for the library, it's for the police station, it's for streets and bridges. So it's reallocated within that same category. So this project's a little unique. This bond program's a little more unique because it has multiple categories. So it's not simple as, hey, this is an extra $7 million for X. We've had one other premium request that's come to the committee that they approved for a transportation project. Correct?
Yeah, it was the first R&R project. Needed a little budget.
Yeah, so this is the second request for premium. And I guess the context I'd add is, you know, it's never a certain thing. So when we go to the market next time, that premium might not be available. Same for the third issuance, or it might be. So you might see another, you know, $14 million that's available with the next two sales, or not. The other thing that's on this slide is interest. So they're tax exempt bonds, but while we're investing them, we're able to accumulate interest earnings. Same restrictions as the bond proceeds. It's all segregated in a separate actual bank account and investment portfolio. There is a potential actually with this level of interest that we'll have to give a little bit of it back to the IRS. It's an arbitrage process. You're only allowed to accumulate so much interest. I think we're on the edge, so I think we're okay at least for now. But we do that calculation every year. So what that brings us to is right now, this is the bond premium cost center. We're also using it for some administrative costs. You'll see the big bump there in the first year was actually some of the issuance costs for the bond. So that's that large bump there. We're also using it for kind of some of the indirect costs associated with financing the projects, things like that. So we are using it for some of those administrative things. But there at the bottom, in the bottom right, this is a couple days old, but year to date for 25, between the premium and the interest, we have just over $13.5 million set aside in this cost center. So when I was hearing the challenges of the Civic Center project and some of these things you'll hear about, it's like, well, we have these funds. It feels like we should, you know, not let the opportunity go by to make sure we're able to make the investment the best it can be. We haven't had that larger policy discussion about, you know, $13.5 million, how it should be categorized or divvied up. Even if you were to do it by the categories of infrastructure, you know, the request today would still be well within the share for the Civic Center, just as context. But the larger discussion that we're going to have at some point is, you know, are we making projects whole if they come in higher than their bid, or are we reducing the scope? You know, what Aaron's told you about the bid processes, right now we're not really needing to do that because we're getting favorable bids, but at some point we might need to. With a 10-year program, it's always a possibility. So just for context, 13.5 million. The request today is just over 1 million for the Civic Center.
Josh, a quick question, sorry. Thank you, you've answered all the questions that I was thinking of, you've answered. But did you say that the IRS, so if we have to give back the IRS, is it because of we've accumulated too much in that account, or is it because you can only earn up to a certain amount? So if it's accumulation, then there's like incentive to spend it.
So it's not accumulation, it's actually getting that return on investment. So the idea with the tax exempt bonds is the bondholders get a premium, we get a premium interest rate just with how competitive those are. What they don't want you to do is take your bonds, sit it in the bank and earn a bunch of interest to increase the amount. They're really there to be spent. So in the course of doing business, if you happen to earn interest, that's great, but there's a limit for how much you can do before you have to arbitrage it back to the IRS. So it's actually how much you earn on the outstanding balance of bonds. It's not just the accumulation of it.
Okay, that's what I was wondering. Is it like how much is in that account, or it's what's you're earning and through?
It's what you're earning.
Okay.
Earning over the whole 10 years or earning in segments?
Yeah, so we have a consultant that actually runs that calculation, which is the industry standard. You want to make sure you're above board. You want to make sure you're doing everything appropriately. So we have a arbitrage consultant that does those calculations, and I can bring back that detail. I don't know off the top of my head if it's annualized and how that works, but we can certainly bring that detail back if you're interested.
And that answered my other question, is do you have somebody that is managing the bonds?
Which is very standard. When you have a bond program, it's not something you want to mess with. You want to make sure you uphold your bond covenants. See, Dr. Brown has his hand up.
Sorry about that.
Oh, no worries. Thanks, Mr. CFO. So on that same line of thinking, Mr. CFO, do we have to give that money back at the end of the fiscal year or at the end of the completion of the project?
So it's a annual calculation. So it wouldn't be it's not based on projects at all. It's just, the return on the money that's still outstanding, the bonds that haven't been spent. So it's not specific to the projects. It's just specific to the bond exempt proceeds sitting in the investment portfolio.
And that happens every calendar year. Is that what you're saying also?
We do the calculation as we're required to annually, yes.
Got it. Thank you.
And just to be clear, it's actually a good thing to have to give a little bit back because that means you're maximizing what you're actually able to earn. So it's not a bad thing. There's been lots of years where, we're earning very, very interest earnings, and it's not even a thought that we might have to give anything back.
Okay, back to me. So this slide, basically we wanted to show this slide to represent and to kind of give you guys a picture of for the project, all of the design alternates that we've been considering throughout our design and the modifications that we've been considering. So we've had 71 items added to this list totaling $7 million. We've accepted 9 to date. And then we have 28 that are pending, that are still a pretty large sum of money. And so we do have handouts for the book.
It's a Word document after the PowerPoint. So
Yeah.
that list, so it's not so tight. There should be a Word doc or what was a Word document before it was a PDF after the slideshow, gentlemen. Thank you.
So yeah, recognizing that it's really small font, we wanted to,
There it is.
full disclosure. We printed out all of these items that we've been considering. So if you're looking at the handout or the Word document, the green items are the ones that have been accepted. And then we have some pending items, like I mentioned. So some of the pending items are part of this request or this ask that we're going to see here in the next slide. But there's also a lot of pending items that we're carrying in our design process. So our designer has been included within their plans. And they're items that we can address after construction. As we get out of the ground, so to speak, and we resolve some of the risk that is on this project, we could potentially release contingency that's already kind of within the project to do those items. And so we're holding those as long as we can, and having the contractor and designer tell us, okay, what's the last moment when we can make these decisions? And so really trying to take advantage of that design build process where we can carry alternates for as long as we can. And so that includes the 28 that are on that pending list. So let's get to the punch line here. So of that 28, these on the list are items that we feel like are crucial and critical to being included in the project. And they're items that we need to know about now. The design, these are the items that the design team and the contractor are telling us we can't really carry these alternates into the construction documents. We need to know whether we're doing them or not because of the complexity it adds on trying to carry multiple pages of different types of design. And so just adds more complexity to the project. So the first one, or the first category on the list there is code required triggers. So I think we may have had conversations about the emergency generator with the past bond oversight committee. And to give you a little bit of background, we have a backup generator in the building, but it's permitted under a temporary status. So it's not really the right generator for the location. And it was installed a few years ago and allowed under that temporary status. And so when this project was funded, the thought was that this project would also replace that generator with a code compliant generator and be in a location that is better for that use. Along with that are some emergency power distribution branch panels that are associated with that generator and installation. And so this generator is something that there's no other funding source for it as we move forward. So if we don't do it with this project, one thought was let's include it in a 5-year CIP, but there's no funding source that's gonna be able to be created to fund it. So that's what that is, and that's why that's on the list. So we're strongly encouraging that be accepted. The next category is customer facing benefits. So we're really trying to create a really consistent customer point of contact throughout the city of Salem. So we've done improvements at the customer service center. We've done improvements at our PW Ops building. And as part of this project, we want to try to create a similar experience for like the permit application center and that kind of community planning development space. And so that includes, I have to look at my sheet here because I can't do that. Oh, you can hold up. I can read this. Yeah, so part of those improvements are creating a CPD pack. So again, community planning development permit application center. So that's a mouthful. Counter. So it includes a pony wall. It includes glazing, and it just it is a space where it can be a consistent interaction with city staff. So our base bid currently is using system furniture, which is what we have at the pack counter today. And the plan was to just reinstall system furniture, but it doesn't give the same. Obviously, it's a different experience for staff for one, and then it's a different experience for the customers. And so this is work that we feel like is important in creating that consistency throughout the city of Salem. The next one down, the third one on the list is the court's lobby enlargement. So we have a fairly small court lobby on the second floor, and it does not currently meet the needs of our programming. And the base bid or the base design of project right now does not include increasing that lobby size. And so we've heard from our court staff and others that is, if we weren't to enlarge it, that would be a pretty large miss on this project. And so we have an alternate design that would increase the lobby size and then also provide, I think, 2 additional service staff to help facilitate a more efficient flow of that line that currently goes out of the lobby and into the open space outside. And I have some pictures following these slides to kind of give you an idea of what we're talking about. And then the next one on the list is storefront doors, demo and infill. So we have a variety of doors throughout the space that as part of the project with that wayfinding and that kind of directional plan, we have a lot of doors on all levels that go into the space. And so it's really difficult for folks to know which door I'm supposed to go into. And so part of our attempt is to reduce those access points for the public. And so this would provide being able to demo that storefront space and then providing a wall and fill. So we don't have any confusion with the public interacting with those doors. And then lastly, on the customer facing benefits is the additional signage and wayfinding allowance. So we're showing 150 here. We could go less than that. We could say, let's do what we can for 100, but essentially this is providing that wayfinding and that signing in the parking garage, within the civic center itself, and then in the atrium space, so that folks have a really clear direction of where they need to go. And then the last one is opportunity cost benefits. So this is really in that mindset of, well, I think all of these have this mindset, but there's an opportunity to do these things now at a lesser cost that's more efficient. And while I'm hesitant to say we can't go back and do it later, it would be more difficult to come back and do it later. The building is open. There's nobody in it during this while the staff is being relocated. And so this really presents a really good time to do this work. And so these items are essentially creating the rough-in for the AV, the audio visual in offices and conference rooms, as well as the rough-in and pathway for new security cameras to get to our IT closets. And so that would just give us an opportunity to grow and have these spaces ready for when we put audio visual in these rooms in the future. So that total is just over $1 million. And I think, unless there's any questions, we'll go to the next slide and just kind of show some representations of what we're talking about. I mean, this kind of speaks. We have a picture of a generator.
Look at that.
In case you didn't
Look
know.
at that generator.
Whoa.
So, but what it does show you on the right is the identified location for this outside generator. So like I said, currently we have one that's in the basement in the parking garage, and we would remove that and install a new one on the outside. I don't think there's any more to say there. Here's a slide for what we were considering for the courts. So on the far right side is the existing lobby space. And we were, like I said, planning to make minimal improvements to that space. And it really is inadequate for the service level that we're seeing in there. The far left was an attempt at an early design attempt at what we could do. That layout impacted the capacity of the courtroom, which was not desired. And so we scrapped that alternate fairly quickly once we talked to courts. And so the middle alternate is what is within this plan or this request. And as you can see, it does increase the lobby slightly from the far right, but more importantly, what it does is create 2 additional workstations that allows that the public to encounter and be served more efficiently.
Ricardo.
Oh yeah, Ricardo.
Yeah, hey, I was just going to interrupt briefly and answer Dr. Brown's question, which is that the current lobby that's shown on the right is approximately 150 square feet. And while it's difficult to tell on the middle drawing, the lobby is both being expanded to the north as well as to the east. It's doubling in size approximately, so roughly taking it from about 150 square feet to about 300.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And if I may, just adding just a little bit, if you've been here early in the morning and you see the line queuing out the door, a lot of that has to do with how many people are actually able to be at the windows to get them processed. So we're not really planning on increasing the queue inside the lobby. It's more getting additional workstations so you can actually get people processed through. The other thing, I'm sure none of you have been to court, but the doors directly at the lower section right there, currently our security person, we have a contract security person, sits in front of one of those doors. It's a very limited, tight space for them to actually do any kind of securing or searching or wanding. So one thing this would give us the ability to do is actually have space to have more security and really less risk for court employees in the courtroom, because we're able to process people going through in a better way.
All right, so this is a rendering of the pack counter that I was describing. So if you've been in the customer service center, you're going to recognize this design. So essentially, it's got the pony wall with the cascading countertop, I guess, and you can hardly see it, but there is glazing there that's there between the staff and the public. So again, the base plan is system furniture, and then this would be the alternative.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify, the pony wall is just the 25.5 wall.
Yeah.
That's what's referred to as pony,
Yeah.
and glazing is the glass between the
You got it.
sections.
You got it.
And so I just, terms I was unfamiliar with, so
Sorry, yeah.
pony wall is what.
Mhm.
We had some discussions about pony wall with our architects, trying to figure out what that term means.
So I'm not the only
Yeah,
one. Thank
not the
you.
only one.
So they can eat.
Height of a pony.
What's that?
Height of a pony.
That's what we kind of came up with.
I think one other important consideration about this piece is there's a security element here too. So it's about customer service, but we do occasionally get folks who get agitated.
Mhm.
And, you know, if it's just a desk between you and that person, it can feel pretty insecure for staff members, depending on the situation. So this kind of provides the same treatment that we've given to that in other places.
Yeah, good point. Good question.
Dr. Brown. Oh, yeah.
Thank you. So I like the graphics there. And so I'm pretty sure you have an answer to this question because I applaud the effort when it comes to just ADA. So the gentleman in that wheelchair there, when it comes to the actual counter, is that counter going to be higher than the wheelchair, or will it be a low counter to where the person in the wheelchair can just easier access?
Yeah, so we knew you were going to ask this question.
We've asked that question.
Yes, this question was asked earlier this week, and I tried to get a modified or corrected rendering, but I was unable to in time for this meeting. So yeah, you're correct. The counter would be lower at the ADA location, which is not represented well in this picture, or actually at all. We will have an ADA counter similar to what's at the customer service center. So you'll have the pony wall height, whatever that is, and then it'll lower at the ADA
Miniature pony.
Miniature pony.
Miniature pony height.
Well, you know what? I appreciate the fact that you were thinking in advance. So thank you for that. I have one other thought. So when you do build that, is there consideration to have the ADA access point at the first counter versus the last? Is there thought into that?
Yeah, it usually is at the first, which is I think why they put that individual in the location that's currently on the rendering. Again, similar to customer service center, as you have that queue from where you walk in, it's that first available space is the ADA space.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much.
Great questions. So yeah, we wanted to kind of recap. So now that you've seen the pictures and the renderings, this is that same slide with the funding request. So at the risk of saying the same thing over again, if there's any questions, if anyone else, if the staff has anything to add that would got any more clarity.
Counselor Tigan has his hand up.
Yeah, thank you. Can you clarify, so the total cost for the ones that are selected here is just over $1 million. What was the total cost for the pending ones, not the rejected ones, but the pending ones?
I think it was 4 million.
Yeah, 4.7.
4.7 million.
Okay.
So we're
Interesting.
carrying, Ricardo, you may be able to help me with this number, but as part of our project budget, we're carrying an owner contingency of, I want to say over 2 million. Do you know that number off the top of your head?
Yes, good memory. It's just slightly over 2 million.
Okay, so we are, and that's a roughly 5 or 6% of our construction budget. I'm asking difficult questions.
Yes, yeah, that's about 6%.
Okay, so we're, just for context, we are carrying that contingency, which actually the contractor also has a contingency that they're carrying on top, to cover their construction documents. So as I mentioned, that as we get out of any of this risk on this project, we could dip into that 2.2 or 2.3 million to fund some of those pending improvements if we chose to. So we have that additional, but this ask would, wipe out half of that contingency. So it's really something where we need to come to this group today, ask to be infused, using Alan's term, into the project from the premium. And then that would keep us safe with our current contingency, and then use those funds later.
Okay, I just would note that the handout that we got, the supplemental, shows some of the things that you're discussing here, like enlarging the court's lobby, the pony wall with glazing. Those are all listed as pending on that document. So it's just a little bit confusing to me what's here and what's on that document.
Yeah. So they're pending right now because we haven't identified any funding to be able to construct them or to include them with the design.
Got it. Okay.
And once we get that approval, if we get that approval, then we would move them into the approved category.
Understood. Thank you.
So does that mean the total's 3 million rather than 4 million for the remaining pending? Or
Oh, sure. Yeah, I think that, yeah.
It'd be roughly 3.6 million if these were accepted. That would remain as pending.
Okay, thank you.
So we still wouldn't be able to afford all of them. Like if we were able to use all our contingency on these people coming up.
But I think, Aaron, I mean, these are the prioritized things that either have to be decided now, are focusing on really that customer facing experience, right? So people coming to the Civic Center, or, the bottom, that opportunity cost, if we don't do these now, they'll be a lot more expensive later. So that's why they're coming to you now instead of that later. We're not prioritizing within the whole pending list. These are the ones that are prioritized for your consideration.
Yes.
And because we have because bids have come in so well, we have this money that could be used based on.
So somewhat the money is sitting there regardless of how the bids come in, but we haven't needed to allocate additional funding because the bids have come in so well. That's not saying that'll hold true for 10 years,
Yes.
but for right now we're looking okay.
Yeah, and I would just add, when we estimated all these projects, we had to figure out what price do we put on them when it goes over 10 years. And so we tried to estimate everyone as a price of what we would expect 5 years out, hoping that early ones would be under and knowing that the later ones would probably be over. So
That was a good strategy, I think. We'll see.
We'll
Find out in 10 years.
yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
It's the AV rough-in work under opportunity cost benefit. Is that tied to AV improvements that are already sort of in the pipeline and coming down the road?
I think it's a little bit of both, Ricardo, right?
Yeah, I didn't understand the question. What was the question?
The question was hi Ricardo, on those opportunity cost benefits, the AV rough-in stuff, is that tied to an AV upgrade project that's already sort of in planning and in works, or it's kind of a, hey, we think maybe sometime down the line we're gonna do this stuff, so let's just rough it in now?
Yeah, it's a little bit of a combination, as Aaron was indicating. So in areas that due to the seismic improvement projects, if we're, let's say, destroying a conference room or relocating a conference room, then we need to put it back. So that's the part that's already being planned for. The part that's in here is the because we have an opportunity where nobody's going to be in the building and we're going to have all the ceilings tore out. Now's the time to upgrade several conference rooms that don't have currently AV, or small rooms that we're creating additional conference spaces, but audio visual is not a part of the bond funded scope of work that we can afford right now. So the idea is, let's at least get the rough in right now to make it much easier that as money becomes available, we would have the opportunity to actually buy the TV, run the cabling, things like that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
But I think at this point, if there's not any other questions or clarifications, we're looking for a recommendation from.
Sorry. I just wondered if you could talk about kind of overall schedule where we are in terms of going to bid for these
Oh.
improvements, and then when you would see the contingency questions being asked and answered.
Yeah, absolutely. So I do have an update on that. So we are currently scheduled to go to construction, like actually be everyone moved out of the buildings, and the contractor moves in July 21st. So right around the corner. And they actually are currently have put out to bid a package that's out on the streets right now. And we've met with, just so you guys know, we had a meeting at the chamber to kind of promote the project and to grow out the work and answer questions from that community. And it was well attended. So we're getting that like actual cost information now. Ricardo, do you know when those are due?
Not exactly, but they're somewhere in the first half of June.
Okay. And then they'll have another bid package that's going to go out shortly after for the remaining stuff. So we're hoping, similar to the past projects that we've had, we want a strong local contingency and really get some competitive bids there. So, and what's our target for GMP?
Yeah, target for GMP is right around that start of construction date. So it's having the GMP executed. I think we're supposed to receive it, but usually there's a decent amount of back and forth beginning part of July so that it can be executed prior to that July 21st date.
Well, if you don't know, GMP is guaranteed maximum price. That's
Thank
the
you.
contract amount that we set.
Yeah. So they gather bids. Some of the work they're going to self-perform. Some of the work they're going to contract out to subcontractors, and they'll package that up into a guaranteed maximum price that we'll sign a contract for and move forward with. So
would you like me to address the contingency part of the question?
Sure.
Yeah, so the contingency that Aaron was referring to of just over $2 million, that's not a bid contingency. So that contingency is not carried in the owner's budget to cover the risk of bidding. That contingency is we're making the assumption that our estimate that we have in right now that we're carrying in terms of hard costs for the construction costs is adequate. That risk is there for the unknowns. We have abatement, we have demolition, we have a lot of existing structural conditions that are documented as best as possible. But on a remodel project, it is not if, but when we're going to encounter surprises. So that's what that contingency exists for. So typically what I would say is, as we're getting through the unknown parts of the project, through the structural phase primarily, which will include the demolition and abatement phase, that's when we'll begin to be able to assess how much remaining risk there is on the project, and does that align with the remaining amount of contingency that we're still carrying.
Great, thank you.
Could I add one more thing? I just for clarity, with this being a progressive design build, when you look at these costs, these are not just architects or engineers coming up with costs, because we have the contractor on board already. They're going back and forth with different subcontractors and talking through pricing. This is probably as close as we can ever get to knowing what it's gonna cost before we receive that hard bid. When we do typical projects and we just put a design package together, the engineers try to figure out what they think it's gonna cost. We bid it and it comes in and it is what it is. Hopefully we're close, but we don't have near as much certainty as we have with something like this. So this gives us a higher level of, I guess, a lot better feel good that we're very close and we can make some of these decisions now.
Anything else?
Do we need a motion or like that?
Yeah,
Recommendation?
we like a recommendation to city council to support the ask for the framing, if that's. I haven't heard a lot of negative comments, but I haven't heard positive comments either. So.
I'll make the motion to support the recommendation from the staff to the city council.
I'm sorry, Councillor Tigan, you're the alternate at this point.
Aren't I but I think I'm here today as the person, aren't I?
No, I'm here, Paul.
Linda made
Oh,
it.
you made it. Okay, sorry. Well, I'll just.
That's
hit
okay.
you.
Sorry.
Oh,
But we appreciate it.
I feel
Yes.
bad. I should walk out. I should walk out so that you can do it.
You did a beautiful job.
I'm gonna walk out in 5 minutes, so no, you should stay.
Well, I'll make a recommendation then that we, not sure how to word that exactly, but refer this to council.
Yeah, absolutely. That's
I
perfect.
will second that.
Thank you, Linda. Good progress.
Just need a vote on
Is
it.
it unanimous?
Oh, we have to vote.
Yeah.
All those in favor?
I,
Aye.
Thank you.
Thanks, Paul.
All right, I just have one more quick, thank you for that. I just have one more quick update.
No,
So
we voted.
No more votes, no more votes. Just a quick update. We have selected our furniture supplier for the project, so that's a great milestone. So we'll start talking about the kind of the more fun stuff about, furniture, what it looks like, how tall the walls, that kind of thing.
That's fun.
Yeah, can be. I mentioned subcontractor competitive bidding has started, so that's good progress. Like I said, we're targeting that GMP. And then for the first move, at least for the group that's moving out, starting first week of June, that moving contractor has been selected. We went through a competitive bidding process for that, and so they're on board, and I've actually already started delivering totes and things.
Dr. Brown has his hand up. Go right ahead, sir.
Yes, thank you. And I think I raised this at our last meeting, so apologies if I'm repeating myself. So when it comes to the furniture or whatever other things we have to buy, is their concern factored into our budget when we consider tariffs? Because things are increasing. And so what we are going to pay for right now is going to look different from what we're going to pay for a year from now. So is that factored into the budgeting process, or are we still fill in the blank for me?
So as it pertains to the contract that Howard S. Wright is providing, they have included a tariff contingency, if you will, separate from all the other contingencies. They have specifically money set aside for tariff, for materials and that kind of thing for constructing the building. For furniture, as part of our selection process, Ricardo, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't believe we included any kind of tariff clause with their bid. But we did get numbers that came in lower than our what we were carrying for an allowance for furniture. Anything to add to that, Ricardo?
Yeah, the two things on the contractor Howard S. Wright side, I would just add the word reasonable. So the contractors carried a reasonable amount of tariff contingency as best as they could apply a reasonableness factor. So there's no guarantees, but it passes the straight face test that it should be enough in theory. The second piece is on the furniture. We did put in the solicitation documents that that is the furniture vendor's risk to cover, so long as we stay within the schedule ordering date that we've indicated that we would abide by, meaning that if there's additional storage costs, things like that are required for them to beat the tariff game, that they need to include that in their bid.
And that would not come back to us. and asking for more money, correct?
If it works the way that we've set it up, yes, that's the plan, is that we were with the furniture vendor specifically, our goal was to plug that risk. It's a bit of a vague answer because
Right.
it's a little unprecedented, so.
Well, Ricardo, I appreciate the very fact that, the folks you're working with, those contractors, that it is put into thought. So I'm pretty sure that gives us in this space just a little bit more, peace of mind, because obviously, I can hear Madam Mayor say this right now, but we don't know what we can control. And so we don't know the unknown, but it's always good to be prepared. So thank you.
So choose your chair sooner than later. Dr. Brown. Don't wait.
Ditto.
Is there,
Do we get a chair?
I don't know. We might not, but
It's not square.
I'd be chosen for you.
is there any concern on the Howard S. Wright, let's call it the contingency on the tariff side for timing? Like, when did they come up with their reasonable estimate? Was it in advance of our so-called Liberation Day? Or was it after post-Liberation Day? Because that would make a big difference.
It was after, and it was with some back and forth scrutiny. I think everybody who's trying to be proactive in the industry is doing their best to pull out their future lens and try to guess educated in an educated way on what's a reasonable amount to carry. So yeah, we've looked at it, they've looked at it. We think that there's enough there, and they're also taking preventative measures to take best value trade partners, mechanical, electrical, plumbing folks that are already on board, and attempt to push some of that risk downstream as well, and ask those folks that are partners at the table already as subcontractors to do their best to prevent that risk from reaching City of Salem's desk.
Okay. Good. I mean, I'm happy to hear that it was after.
One more slide real quick. Move update. I know. So just in case anyone wants to know, we're scheduling to move into to 2850 Broadway and be operating July 14th and 21st. The reason for the two separate dates is we're going to try to logistically have one courtroom at Civic operational while we set up secondary courtroom at Broadway, and then we'll swap. So we have those two dates there. Public Works operations building is going to be accepting the Public Works staff here at the end of June, starting early July. The Parkway building, as I mentioned previously, that's community planning, customer service, city manager's office, finance, city recorder. That move is starting first week of June, and we actually have changed the operating June date to the 16th. So it shows the 9th on here, but it's actually gonna be the 16th.
oh,
And then legal has already moved to 295 Church. Most of legal. There's going to be a contingent of legal at the Broadway building, and then some staff at the Parkway building. But they've moved to that location and operating already. So,
Will the June 9th council meeting be at the Laux?
I always forget to include Laux. So yeah, Laux was in progress and getting really close to being complete. And I think actually we have a couple meetings next week for council staff to review it and see it in its kind of setup form. And so plan is for that first June meeting to be up. Okay. Yeah. Great.
There's also an update on the agenda from Tuesday night about all of this.
I'll be back. Yeah.
anything else on that? Center Street Bridge. Alan Dannon.
And actually no action required on this today, as we were kind of pulling all our information together. We realized there's some more cost elements that we need to pull together to give you the full package for decision making. So we'll bring that back next month, but I'll kind of give you a sneak preview of what the issue is, so it won't get you cold next month. So folks may or may not know this, that the city operates a fiber optic network. And most of that is related to our traffic signal system, and that's communication between those systems. But it also connects city facilities like City Hall, IT, police station. We have some interconnections with other agencies like Marion County. And one leg of that system runs along Front Street and is in conflict with the upcoming Center Street Bridge project that ODOT is starting next year. So we've identified, so there's some work that has to be done to relocate that conduit to get it out of the way. We've identified a way to sort of prevent a more significant service disruption by creating a redundant pathway with some new fiber through downtown. That would also give us the additional benefit of the ability to connect the Willamette Valley Communications Center, our dispatch center, which is currently connected through Comcast internet, so at a cost to us. So that's a good opportunity to consider. The reason why we're bringing it here is there's a project in the technology and cybersecurity portion of the bond portfolio called Redundant Fiber that has $2 million attached to it. And that could be a potential use to provide this secondary loop. There's other ideas in mind for that redundant fiber project as well, basically creating or completing a ring network around the city that provides redundancy so that if you have a break somewhere, you can communicate around the rest of the ring. So we want to bring back what that looks like alongside what this downtown solution could look like and how all that cost fits together. And then if y'all would be supportive of doing the downtown work in advance of the Center Street project, that's the ask that we'll be bringing back next month. So just a heads up for you all. I'll take any questions, but we'll have more time to talk. Thank you.
I have a question, Mr. Engineer. And I don't know if this is the place to ask it, but I recall, I think Madam Mayor asked this, I forget what meeting because we're in so many meetings. But remember, there was a little discussion or a question about dispatch being, put into this building, the building that you're in. Is that still under discussion or is that off the table completely?
Not building this building to their standards for seismic needs. They need to be able to function in an emergency. We're only building this building so that we can leave safely, not return to work.
Got it. Okay, thank you. That answers all the other 100 questions I was going to ask, so we're good.
Okay.
Any questions, anyone?
I just wonder, Alan, maybe just put some context on it. Alan's talking, there's a $2 million budget. This
Oh,
is
yeah.
Very small.
We're talking about $300,000 out of that $2 million. Thank you, Brian.
Oh.
The question we were wrestling with internally is just to make sure that the balance of the funding could still complete the other goals. So that was the outstanding question we just wanted to have for this group.
I have a question.
Mhm.
Okay. So is this something that we can, because we're needing to move these fibers, is that something the state could accommodate us for? Support some of this change? And if so, what would we be looking at as an ask? And
It actually works the other way around because our fiber's in their right of way.
Oh.
So they need to tell us to get out of their way and we have to pay for it. Just
I
like
asked the
we
same
would-
thing.
Just like we would if Comcast was in our right of way and would.
that's important for us to keep our right of ways.
Yeah, that's right.
And so then the next question would be, it appears that we will need to be doing this fairly quickly. So I would hope that you bring it to us as soon as
Yep,
possible.
we'll bring it back
because-
next month.
And I want to follow up Councilor Nishioka's question. So you said 300K, is that what you said, Mr. Denon?
Yeah.
300. And do we have to spend all that 2 million or no?
No, there's no restriction if the project doesn't cost as much to fully spend it. It could be reallocated to other projects. I think what we're wanting to make sure is that, well, we have to do this piece and getting the redundant loop in just downtown is important. The redundant loop for all the traffic signals and city operations is also important.
Right. So I think what we want to show you all is that we're going to give you that value with whatever we spend, whether it's 2 million or a little bit less. If that's how it comes in, that we sort of accomplish the objective for that one part.
Got it. Thank you.
And there's nothing to recommend?
Not today.
Not
Next
today.
month.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Moving on to pedestrian safety crossings. Here comes Julie.
Hello. So in the last few months, we've spent quite a bit of time here talking about the sidewalk infill and the sidewalk repair categories in the bond. We have not spent as much time talking about the safer crossings. And so the pedestrian crossing bucket is about $3.5 million included in the bond. About a year ago, we came to this committee and council and got approval to apply for a federal grant for pedestrian crossings using bond funds as that potential match. We were not successful in getting that grant. But this grant program, the Safe Streets and Roads for All, is a 5-year program, and there's another opportunity to apply. This would be the year 4 out of the 5-year program. There's $1 billion allocated at the federal level to support this program. And so we are recommending that we once again put our project in the bucket and see if we can get funding, because that would help leverage our limited bond funds to deliver more pedestrian crossings. After we were unsuccessful with the grant application last time, we did have a debrief with the federal agency to get some feedback, and largely I think just too many people applied, right? So not that our project was terrible, but they did have one piece of feedback was that our project seemed sort of scattered, because we had used the approach of the Safer Crossings program where people put in requests, and then we had taken the scores. And so we had I think we had one up at on Kale Road, and we had another crossing, down on South Liberty. So, so for this round, what we're recommending is that we sort of pull it in a little bit and focus loosely around what we're calling the Market Street corridor. So there is a map in your handouts here that shows that proposed package. The application deadline for this is June 26th. We are hoping to go to City Council on June 9th to get approval to apply. And so we're here to ask for your support of using bond funds to help with that application.
Could I add one thing here?
Yes.
Yeah. So when we looked at the map of, how many were there, like
19 there were last time. This
Was it-
reduces it to 12.
19, 12. So we looked at where could you pick a cluster,
Right.
right? And so, well, maybe there's a cluster in South Commercial, maybe one on Lancaster, but it's in and out of the county, and then you got this cluster along Market, and just felt like with the way they're going to score the criteria, that cluster along Market felt like the best approach.
May I ask a question?
Yeah.
What does the bond money pay for in this process?
It would pay for the match. So there's a required match of 20%.
Okay.
So if our preliminary estimate for these 12 crossings is about $8 million, we're still refining that. And so it would be the match, which is 20%, so about 1.6 million. In our draft staff report to council, we're saying up to 10 million for the ask, with up to 2.5 million for the match. But those numbers will probably need to get tighter as we prepare the application.
Okay. Thank you.
And I'd add too, if we didn't do this, what are they averaging? About $500,000 each?
Approximately. So without this, we'd be able to deliver somewhere between 5 and 7 crossings total. And so with this, we'd be able to get these 12, plus we'd still have money to do another, probably 3 or 4. So, so basically what we're trying to do is leverage this funding source because it's available, and it's available for this year, and then there'll be one more year after this. If we don't get the funding, we have to wait to see when they issued the release to see if they changed the program significantly. They really did not change this program significantly, but who's to know next year.
The other-
Oh, wait, there's part of it I forgot to mention. Sorry.
No, Director Martin, you were, I didn't hear the tail end of what you said. You said that we're trying to concentrate in what area? I didn't hear that.
Yeah, so we looked at that big map and there were three that kind of stood out. One was along South Commercial, one was along Lancaster, and one was along Market Street. And we felt Market was the best one. It had the most locations in the smallest cluster. And it was better than, say, Lancaster, which is inside and outside of the city. So it's kind of city, county. And the South Commercial just didn't have as many, and it was spread out. So when you look at the map, it was like, this looks like the best location.
Got it. And I think that you said that some of the feedback that we got was that our project scope was too vast, too large. I think you said too scattered. Is that what you said?
Yes, too geographically scattered. And so, this is a little bit more pulled in. Now it's not like everything is right along Market, right? It's just in that general travel corridor. It includes things up by McKay High School and down by North Salem High School, largely. There is one important part of this grant that I forgot to mention, and I think it's because it's not infrastructure. So in this round, they did make a change that you're required to address 3 of the 5 safe system approach elements, which is, it's safer people, safer roads, safer speeds, safer vehicles, and post-crash care. So obviously, we don't have anything to do with post-crash care. We don't have much to do with safer vehicles. So our application needs to hit those other 3 marks, and the improving the pedestrian crossings, hit safer roads and hit safer speeds by, doing some traffic calming. But the safer people part, we needed something else. And so we've talked to police, and so we are recommending including in the grant application some funding to support high visibility enforcement activities. So that's sort of like, crosswalk stains is the way I've heard them referred to, but basically really trying to use enforcement, highly visible, as really an education tool. So, it would pay for some police overtime to go out and do enforcement efforts along these areas. So we're recommending about, I think, $80,000 to support those efforts.
So does that mean having a police officer there to patrol vehicles that are not stopping for pedestrians? Is that?
Mostly, typically that's what it is. And they'll put up signs in advance, and they'll do.
Warn you. It's
Yeah, they'll warn.
educational
It's an
process.
educational, but they still issue, both warnings and violations. But yeah, and they'll do press releases in advance to say they're going to be doing it. So it's not trying to be a gotcha. It's just trying to improve enforcement. And so we'd have enough money to do a few of those efforts. I'm not exactly sure. We probably want to do them more ongoing rather than waiting for all of these new crossings to be constructed, but instead use like existing enhanced crossings as places to do that.
Would they use it to enforce people using crosswalks?
I don't know. I don't know if that would be a part of the police effort or not.
And I don't know what the data is on accidents, but out on Lancaster, it just happens a lot where
Right.
people don't use the crosswalks.
I mean, it seems to me that if you were doing a enforcement at a protected crossing and you see, somebody, 200 feet away, jaywalk,
Whatever the
jaywalking
word
is
is
not,
now.
the thing is that jaywalking is actually not illegal in Salem. So I don't know exactly. You'd have to ask police that.
It certainly seems unsafe, but it's
Yes,
not. It's not.
And I can check in with police before we go to council just to make sure we have that information.
And Julie, Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead, Counselor.
I was just
Go
gonna
ahead.
say jaywalking happens on commercial, especially around Madrona, Fred Meyers. It's just amazing. It's just like, I think you only have to walk, 20 feet and you're at the crosswalk. I don't know why, but
Right. Well, my question, Julie, was with that enforcement from PD, does it have to be in the same concentrated area or can be anywhere throughout the city?
I think it depends on how we want to, deliver it. I don't think it has to be in that area. I mean, we'll talk to we do have a consultant that's helping us with the grant application. We can see if they can give us any, suggestions.
Right. And the consultant that's helping with the grant, is that Moss Adams or a different contractor?
No, it's DKS who it does some traffic consulting for us. And they
Right.
helped with the application last year, so it's not a significant workload to submit this application because we're just sort of shrinking it down and condensing it, and then
Yeah.
adding the enforcement, high visibility enforcement portion.
Would it be okay if this group were to see the grant application before it's submitted?
Goes to
It-
council.
Well, we're going to council for approval to apply, not with the full grant application written. We do have the locations, are shown in in a handout that we have here, but I don't know, did you email that to?
I don't know if it's in the email. It is in the email or
So
no?
It is.
She's gonna share the
sure,
screen.
this is primarily Ward in 1 and 6.
Yes, it's wards 1 and 6.
If I can make it bigger.
And I guess what's probably, it's not necessarily shown on here is that on Market Street, we have 2 other crossings that are already funded. One
Mhm.
by Sweegle Elementary School and one by Market at 15th. So while those don't exist yet, they are funded. We also, of course, everywhere there's a traffic signal, that's considered a protected crossing for pedestrians because they have the light that turns red for the cars.
Mhm.
So, so while there's only 3 on Market here, it's sort of generally bounded by that area.
Right. And so one of my questions, so you had said earlier, safer roads, safer speeds, and also for people. When we think about, applying this next go around for funding, do we have to take into consideration where we've had, more pedestrian, incidents or fatalities? Do we have to put that in with our grant application, or is that something we're not even discussing?
Our consultants do pull up the crash history based on the most recent available crash data. We're also looking at the high risk, what do you call it? Conditions that tend to be a high risk for, a crash. So
Got it.
we're not waiting for somebody to get hit somewhere before we are proactively trying to provide safe crossings, but we do look and see, are there locations where we've had incidents? So I know Market at 15th is one where we, did have an incident and we were successful in getting funding through the ODOT Safe Routes to School program. So that will be constructed in the next few years. That award was just made earlier this year.
Got it. I have two more. I have 2 more questions. I promise I'll be quiet after these last 2 questions. So, the 20%, that's like 1.6 million, right? And so I think that's the ask. Is that the ask?
The ask is to provide bond funds to match. I think in the staff report, we're saying up to 2.5 million. I think it will probably be less than that. And that's out of the 3.5 million that's currently allocated for safer crossings.
Got it. And the final one, when it comes to partnerships, because I know when we apply for grants, we're always looking for people that we can partner with. Is there room in this grant to partner with Safe Routes for Schools?
That would be a possibility. We will definitely partner with them in terms of education around the ones that are near schools. So like North High School, there's a couple that are on walking routes to there, as well as the one over by McKay High School. So yeah,
Mhm.
we would be partnering with them on this, yes.
Okay, so I want to say I appreciate, you taking the lead on this and just sharing all this, because this is great information. I love the idea of applying for grants. And I would say if you need any additional support or help, or whatever, please count me in.
Okay, great.
Yes.
Just a couple of quick questions. I should know the answer to this. Is Market part of the core transit network? Do you know?
Honestly, I don't have that memorized.
So, and the follow-up would be, I assume that there are transit stops along Market, and I'm curious about how these relate and link to that. I mean, it seemed to be a.
Right. Well,
something
as
size.
we, as we evaluated all of our crossing requests, proximity to transit stops was one of the criteria looked at. I don't have memorized on each one of these. I do know that the one over on Sunnyview by Green Tree, so that's the one that's the furthest to the east,
Yep.
was a specific request from transit. They would actually relocate their bus stop if we put that there,
Right.
because, but that was their request.
I think that's an important part of the people.
Right,
part of this,
so
yeah.
just trying to make sure that we are communicating. So,
Yeah, Market as a multiple lane road is one that is a higher risk for pedestrians, so I think this is a great corridor to be focusing on.
I agree. I think, and I also really appreciate the fact that you got the information of that it was scattered so that you could then concentrate. So I think that that's nice that you can get that feedback.
Mike, did you?
Yeah, I have a question, and I think it might be, Josh might be able to answer this, I'm not sure. Does it create any issues or complications if the match coming from the bond funds is going to a program that a part of the program, like the enhanced police activity, that's not a capital expenditure? Does it create any issue there?
We would use the bond funds on the infrastructure side.
So you can designate or segregate that.
Right.
That was the question.
and, say we're talking between 8 and 10 million total. We're talking about 80,000
Yeah.
for the police part, so that would come totally out of that grant part.
But a really good question, because
Yeah.
their dollars they're providing have to be less restrictive than the bond dollars to be able to do that.
I have a question, please. The first criteria you mentioned, I think, was post-crash care.
That was one of the 5 areas, yes.
I'm just curious, what is that? What would that be, like a phone to call if there's a crash, or a broom and a dustpan?
I think that refers to, I'm not an expert in this area, but I do think that refers to more like things with the emergency room or with the first responders, so incident response, getting there quickly type of thing.
I'm just curious about that. I don't want to make more work for you, but.
I can look it up. They have a whole thing, I think, on all of the 5 safe system approach. I'm sure each one of these are described in more detail, but because we're public works, I tend to focus on the safer,
Yeah, if we can hit
roads and
another
speeds.
button.
There may be a way for fire.
Mhm. Thank you.
I would just share one last thing, and it's the funding itself. And so there's concerns, are we gonna be able to accept federal funding? What's gonna happen with those restrictions? Tom Capani, one of our city attorneys, looked into it. He didn't see anything in the request for funding. If anything comes up, it would likely be if we got a grant and then got to sign an agreement to accept the funding, that maybe more some of those show up.
10 seconds, we didn't think about it, Brian.
Yeah.
Oh, well. Anybody else?
So I would appreciate a
Recommendation?
recommendation.
Anybody want to make a motion?
I move that we recommend the city council to provide a 20% match out of bond funding.
God bless you, and I'll second.
Is that a sufficient motion? Okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, motion passes. Or recommendation, yes. Are there any new items? No. Management update, information items, project updates. Mr. Dan and the local vendor report.
Yeah, so we'll be quick on these items, but You have the most up-to-date local vendor report as part of your packet. It's updated through this week. Got a lot of bids in, so this is the most up-to-date. There are a few more bond projects bidding in the next month or so. And we'll also get the subcontractor bids in on the Civic Center that Aaron mentioned earlier. So the next time we update this, we'll bring all those in. But the great news is we're still on the last page of the report here, we're still over 80% to Marion County businesses, contractors, and consultants have been awarded contracts out of this. So out of everything that we've awarded so far, almost 82%. So that's great news.
That's
And
wonderful.
I think with construction, so far we've only had one. Knife River on the very first project was the only non-Marion County contractor that was the low bidder. So everything else has gone to folks right nearby. So that's great. We'll keep updating this for y'all in the future as more results come in.
On to cash flow.
Cash flow, similarly, this sheet just gives you an update on expenditures to date and what's still programmed. This is what I use. So I don't know if you're like me, I usually go right to the bottom line of the spreadsheet. That's what I use to kind
But
of
that's
keep
the
track of
important line, isn't it?
what we've spent and what's left to spend. And this is the important distinction here between this and like the previous pie chart that we showed. This is really based on expenditures. That was based on the total budget of the project, right? So that much budget of the whole program is spoken for. This is actually what we've spent. So not that didn't take into account savings. This does.
And nobody has any questions on any of that? South Commercial.
South Commercial is the last thing on the list, I think. So a reminder, our 2024 pavement R&R project, one of the first ones that we did last year, included a stretch on South Commercial from Fabry all the way to ODOT's jurisdiction on the I-5 ramps. And the next to the last signal, if you're going south, is Madras Street. As we were wrapping up construction last fall in October, one of the things that we have to do with these projects is make sure the ramps are up to current ADA standards. And part of that work is push buttons and the pedestrian signals have to be in the right place at the right height. And so that often requires some modifications to the traffic signals to make those things be where they're supposed to be. So about in October, we were doing that work, finishing up that work on that Madras signal, and discovered damage to the wiring, not that the contractor was touching, but existing damage to the wiring that connects all the signal components around the intersection. And they had to do kind of a temporary workaround to keep that signal operational while they finished up their paving and tried to get everything else done according to their deadlines. And we said, in the meantime, let's understand what it would cost to fix that. So we've been working through that as we close out the contract with them. And the issue is, if we don't make a fix, there's risk that the signal will fail and just stop working. So they kind of did a temporary, but it's not a long-term good answer. So what needs to happen is essentially pull new wire in all the lengths of the intersection to connect to the power source and the signal cabinet, and then reconnect everything that's there. That's an expensive proposition, about $78,000, but it's going to need to be done. So the question is, the contract is still open, and we have a price from the signal subcontractor on the job to do this work, and it makes sense to get it done. In the heat of the battle, it probably wouldn't have been as big of a question about using bond funds to do it. But now that we're several months past the rest of the work being done, we wanted to bring it here and just say that's an option, and probably the best option to fund the work. The alternative would be to go to traffic operations funds and draw into their reserves, which they would have to do if we went out and found this independently. The overall budget situation for the project is we are projecting about $300 and just short of $400,000 in savings and bringing back to the program. So we did say, yes, we want to use 78,000 more to make this fix out of the project, we would still return 314,000 in savings on this project. I think we just wanted to bring it, I don't know if we need to vote on this item or not, but we just wanted to bring it here and kind of gauge your comfort level of getting, or using these funds at sort of this point after the project closes out.
I think it'd be good to, I mean, it'd be good to get your thoughts on maybe a vote, because it's really a 50-50. I mean, it's right on the fence. You know, you could argue that it was damaged before the contractor got there, so our gas tax funds should be used to fix it. You could also argue that, hey, the project is there, you know, we're connecting ADA improvements that feed into the same system in order for them to work. It needs to be working also, so you could make an argument that, yeah, that's a good use of the bond funds. And so we were just undecided. I was leaning towards just using the gas tax fund, but we also know, you know, the status of our transportation fund and how that looks going forward, which is not great. And so we thought this was an opportunity to get your opinion on it. So we didn't want to make that call on our own.
And my gut always goes to Josh usually. Are we okay doing that? Is that?
Yeah, I think, you know, when I first heard about this, I think a couple weeks ago, my instinct was, you know, it's kind of like when you find something during a project that's not known, right? Like you find asbestos or you find something else that you have to mitigate. I think this is similar. So my recommendation would be to use the bond funds.
It's very similar to the issue we found at the bridge out here and did a much more expensive fix with the bond project. And it was the time to do it because we were out there and had things torn.
How common is this sort of problem? I mean,
good question. It's not uncommon to run into complications when we're messing with signal wiring, especially older signals like this one. I think as we go through and upgrade the system, it becomes less of an issue as we make adjustments. But this signal was a little bit on the older side, so it does happen.
I keep going straight in my head to there was damage, and immediately I'm like, from what?
Who did you?
Is it deterioration?
Yeah, I think it
Or
was.
is it damage?
It's more
So it's
deterioration.
deterioration. It wasn't like damage.
Yeah, it wasn't like that.
So I'm thinking like Madras, that's where they did the throughway to Battle Creek, right? Is that Madras?
Yeah, just south of there.
It's just south
where
of
we
that one.
punched in
Okay.
The city project punched in the road.
Okay.
Last 12, 13 years.
So we're talking really more about deterioration of the existing system, correct? Simply coming damaging.
Yeah.
So, any other questions?
I would simply say that as long as it meets the criteria for the bond funds and there's already some known savings, it seems like that would be an appropriate source for the funding. We're going to have continued stretches for the utilities and transportation. So we have a mechanism to be able to pay for this, and there's funding, I would say would be better. My preferred choice.
Very good. So if nothing else, I'll recommend that we bring to council the use of bond funds to pay the $78,000 to get this fixed.
Do we need to take this to council?
So I think at this point, it's actually probably an administrative decision. What we wanted to do is get your recommendation as the oversight committee. So it doesn't have to go to council. We just like your support for either direction.
Then I retract my recommendation and simply give you a thumbs up.
Maybe you said this, are there any immediate safety concerns with the deterioration and the operation of that signal?
Yeah, I mean, it is at risk of failure, so we want to get it done.
So one thumbs up from me.
Yeah, I'll give it a thumbs up.
I think we're fortunate that there's savings in the project that enable us to do this. And when you said 50-50, I kind of thought, well, maybe that's an idea. Well, 50 from operating and 50 from bond, but
It was more
I'm
50-50
fine.
choice.
yeah, I understand. I jumped to conclusions.
I know, I can do it too.
I should have said it much better.
60-40.
Yeah, but
We were on the fence. That might be a better way.
Yeah.
Where's the dice?
CFO, are you looking at me for an answer, for a thumbs up?
I'm seeing if there's a thumbs up or not. Yeah.
No, I love it. I love the idea of savings. And yeah, if you're on board because we trust you and your expertise. If you say yes, then I'm gonna cheer you forward.
Mhm.
Great.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. June meeting, bring your own chair.
Hopefully not.
So do you mind, Madam Mayor?
No,
If I give it, so just real quick update, so we will be luckily under renovation, so we have booked a room at Safe for our meeting in June. The details of that are forthcoming. I just got the room booked through secret sources I have. So I will keep you all apprised, but be prepared to be at Safe next month. Or virtual.
We're calling
if
it the
you need to.
Parkway Building.
Oh, pardon me, the Parkway Building. I'm so sorry. The Parkway Building. That's gonna be a hard habit to break.
Yeah.
I'm with
Yeah.
you.
Okay.
Time I see it,
And-
I say safe.
As an early FYI, the only public access, except I think you'll have access because your office is on the fourth floor, but the public access is the fifth floor.
Hello, sir.
So those attending in person need to go to the fifth floor and then have staff bring that to the fourth, which is I think what the meeting.
Because you need a
are.
special badge.
Yes.
We,
yes.
we,
See, and we won't have it.
we've also thought about for these kind of higher, public meetings, having someone just stationed
Yeah.
down to escort people up, just because there is public access. We want to make sure, we're not having a barrier to that.
Right.
So
Right.
would,
Good idea.
and I'm sure we'll learn this later, will we be entering from the west side or will we be entering from the east side where parking is? And is that where we can park? Or do we know yet?
You can park on the flat lot, which is on the east side.
Is on the east side, and so
Uh,
come in those
Come in,
doors.
probably that would be the best. Yes.
That's kind of why we're calling it the Parkway Building, just so that you can intuit. the
Think of it
access
as on
is
the parkway.
Off the parkway,
Okay.
right, and that, open parking lot, surface parking lot is for business.
I'll have to discover how it is.
Off the parkway.
You can technically get to it from both sides.
You have options.
Okay, is there any other business?
Singer? I have one more slide.
God.